Hello again, welcome to this video clip. This is looking at ISO 9001 clause 8.7, control of non-conforming output. So most organizations we deal with will have some element of control over non-conforming product already inherent in their process. I think what we need to just consider here is that we have to take a generic and fairly high level view of the criteria at this point, because each of you will have your own way of dealing with this dependent on the nature of the work. So think food processing, think ingredients and inputs into the process. Where are you likely to find non-conforming product? Processing of those materials then through your machinery and equipment and other processing behaviors. So where can you find non-conformity there? Where can you spot, and where do you need to check to make sure that the specification of the work is being met? So with that, let's look at the criteria of 8.7.1. The organization shall ensure that outputs that do not conform to their requirements are identified and controlled to prevent their unintended use or delivery. That's a straightforward thing. Consider how you're going to meet that criteria, because an auditor will be stuck here if you have no way of showing them how you respond to this. So the idea here is that you have some formal mechanism for identifying non-conformities. The organization shall take appropriate action based on the nature of the non-conformity and its effect on the conformity of products and services. So it's probably acceptable to have tolerances built in. So very minor defects, which by their nature will have no impact on the outcome of the process. That might be acceptable, but it would need to be something that's benchmarked and there's good knowledge and understanding of the non-conformity. This shall also apply to non-conforming products and services detected after delivery of products, during or after the provision of services. So that's important to understand, that there's the ongoing obligation to speak to the intended use of the product and service that you're delivering. So it has to meet the specification and the expectations of the customer, really. Next, the organization shall deal with non-conforming outputs in one or more of the following ways. A, correction. B, segregation, containment, return or suspension of provision of products and services. That applies, we mentioned food safety just a moment ago. Think of product recall and so on. C, informing the customer. What do you need to communicate? How do you need to communicate it? Who communicates? To whom? All of those things need to be considered. I think for organizations in food processing, medical device and pharmaceutical manufacturing, also software engineering, if there is an issue that is a bug that just can't be fixed, or you're having issues fixing, if the design specification can't be met, for example, well, informing the customer might become very important, and knowing when to inform the customer and how could be something that needs to be considered in your own organization. D, obtaining authorization for acceptance under concession. This is obvious in the design arena. A graphic designer, for example, in a print organization for intent for printing, will have to make sure that if a particular design specification cannot be met, that the concession is documented and agreed by all parties before proceeding to print and so on. Conformity to requirements shall be verified when non-conforming outputs are corrected. A lot of our customer organizations are involved in software engineering, to test bug fixing, looking at Asana or Jira or, Autotask, whatever you're using to manage your fixes. An auditor will be looking there and will be looking that there's good information and good prioritization of these segregated fixes that need to be incorporated into the formality of the system. So just to keep that in mind. I suppose the overall point of clause 8.7.1 really is to make sure that all of these potentials for negative impact on the process, anything that might um, stop you from meeting the requirements of the product or service you're offering. It's how you identify them and what kind of controls you need to put in place so that they can be effectively identified when they need to be, not when it's too late. Just an example might be, the print sector, where you have those periodic checks throughout a print run. Likewise, in any manufacturing operation, there will be appropriate points where measures need to be taken to benchmark against design and product specifications. I think with regard to the food sector in particular, whether you're involved in processing or storage or transportation and logistics, any identification of non-conforming product at your level of participation in the sector, it's important that it's identified where the non-conformity occurs. Okay, so that's just something for consideration. And we move on now to 872. Clause 872, the organisation shall retain documented information that A, describes the nonconformity, B, describes the action taken, C, describes any concessions obtained, and D, identifies the authority deciding the action in respect of the nonconformity. So, the number of organizations we've worked with over the years, when we come to address this criteria, oftentimes our clients are worried that they have to change something or have to take on a level of bureaucracy that's not necessary. However, usually we agree to decide on implementing something that makes sense. So really, you have to look at the nature of your own work. So previously we were discussing, the identification of nonconformities. I guess after that, you've got to think of the system that you use for that purpose. For example, in automated manufacturing environments, there are ample reports and systems records to adequately satisfy an auditor's requirement in this regard. So, for example, in a commercial laundry situation, it's quite easy to monitor all of the metrics that the customer would be interested in. So in that environment, the example we'll use is during a wash, where the customer requirement is that the garments being washed reach a temperature of 60 degrees for a period of 10 minutes, with a certain percentage of chemical agents used in the wash. So you then consider the environment, and the machines are probably monitored through a computer application with a dashboard for monitoring the temperature, the time of the washes, the time that the objective temperature was reached. And it's probably got controlled input into the wash for the amount of chemical agent that's used for detergent and bleaching and so on. I think if you consider the requirements of a pharmaceutical or medical devices manufacturer or processor, with regard to bacteria, and for their laundry subcontractor to be meticulous about control of these particular metrics. So in that environment, everything is probably automated, and the requirement really will be for this area of monitoring of those metrics, who's responsible, which we're going to look at shortly through clause 9. But having said that, there needs to be enough documented information so that that performance evaluation can be monitored effectively. So for Enable ISO customers, you're probably aware of our introduction of the car register, and there's a subsequent video to address that particular application. But for most organizations, if you're already using a software application to document nonconformities, you just have to make sure that before closing them out, that appropriate records are kept to describe the action taken and by whom and so on, So it's all about being able to document it in such a way that you're able to demonstrate to an auditor that you manage this aspect of the theft. So please get in touch through the website or the chat box if you need any further help. That's it for now. Thank you.